recognition. Number 2 was they didn't like what the local government was doing. Number 3 was they wanted to change something. And so typically you're only going to hear from people who don't like the status quo. People who think what you're doing is right are just expecting the governmental services to be provided, and they're probably not going to take the time to let you know. And it's no different than when you go out to restaurants or grocery stores. Very few people actually fill out the customer service unless there's a problem or some sort of exceptional service that they really like. So that's a reason to do this, is to make sure you're hearing from the broader community at large, and then also help you understand how you're doing over time. So we had a lot of the same questions this year, so I'll be able to show you some of the trends.
Michael, can I
Yes.
ask a question?
Sure.
How many of those communities broadcast like we do live or
It's pretty common now. So I'd say it's actually the minority that don't broadcast.
It's amazing how many people that I will run into in town who watch these movies at home, watch these meetings at home, that's a slip, for entertainment or to put themselves to sleep at night. But it's amazing how many actually watch them.
In this year's survey, we administered to a little over 500 residents. The overall results aren't perfect, but they have an accuracy of about plus or minus 4.3% at the 95% level of confidence. And what that means in simple terms, if we did the same survey the same way 100 times, we'd expect to get the same results within about plus or minus 4% or less, 95 times out of 100. So it's a good sample, and we conducted it we had a group, most were full-time residents, but 8% were not. So we're able to take a look at what some of their results and needs and expectations are. We had a third of the folks report that they own a business of some kind in Pitkin County. So if you want to get a sense for what business owners think, you'll be able to do a sub-analysis of the data. We also had how long folks had lived here. About 30% over 30 years, but quite a few people had lived here less than 10 years, 27%. Good distribution by age. 10% were Hispanic, which is comparable to the most recent census estimates. And overall, good distribution by income. All of the income categories were represented. So, and male-female split. And I just share this with you just so you know you have a representative sample, and also so you know the types of variables we collect. So if you have an issue that comes up with low-income folks or an issue that comes up with Hispanics, they're growing. That was an issue last time. It's even more pronounced this time. But people definitely definitely value the benefits they're getting from your open space and trails portion of your property taxes. And moving forward, growth management and economic sustainability were kind of the two issues probably to continue to pay attention to. So that's where we're headed. As far as the perceptions of the county, we ask residents to rate lots of things, like what it is like to live here, what they think about the image of the county, and even whether or not they think the county's moving in the right direction. And you'll notice that we shade things. Blue tends to be good, red tends to be not so good. And you'll see there's very little red on here. In fact, nothing that was assessed for the perceptions, which are kind of our strategic indicators for the health of a community, had fewer than 50% of the respondents giving positive ratings. And when it comes to the direction that you're moving, you probably hear from these 18%, but every time you hear from somebody complaining, remember there's 3 people out there that actually feel the opposite way. So you've got 54% that are actually giving you positive ratings. And definitely this gets great ratings as a place to live, raise children, and so forth. Yeah, question?
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, when I look at these numbers, as a place to live, 68% says excellent. Overall quality of life, 57% says excellent. But then I go down to overall image of the county, and only 29% say excellent. It seems like, given the numbers up above, that would have been higher. How do you?
Yeah, this is a brand, the intensity of the response, and there can be lots of things that go into image or sense of community. But at the end of the day, sometimes what I find is when place to raise children, place to live, quality life, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but sometimes you have a community where people are kind of inward focused. They're not worried about, they want to make sure their family's doing well, their kids are doing well, and that's kind of their primary concern. And so they don't worry as much about the other areas, because you see there's not a lot of negativity here.
Right.
But again, they're not as intense about it. It may not be that important to them, and they're not as concerned. And so a lot of times people will say, hey, it's good, I feel good about it, but when it really matters to them, if you're doing doing it right, they'll give you an excellent rating. And that's kind of what you see here. There's really nothing on our strategic indicators. Even as a place to work, you'll see that 68% are giving you positive ratings. And I know that's one of the issues is the economic sustainability, making the community a good place to work, and you're doing well there. The other thing we looked at is just some major categories of city service or county services, how you're doing overall. And you'll see that overall 75% or 3 out of 4 get positive ratings. Phenomenal compared to other communities. I'll show you the benchmarks in a little bit. Only 7% are dissatisfied or give negative ratings. So that means for every person that complains, there's 10 people out there that actually think you're doing a good job. Customer service, you see similar numbers, 72% to 7. And this is the one that really stands out, value for taxes, because this is culturally something people rate negative. In other words, people don't like taxes, so this tends to just be rated low. It's typically in the 30s, I believe. I'll show you the numbers in just a little bit for your comparables. But you can see 66% give positive ratings, just 13 negative ratings, so over 4 to 1. And the overall effectiveness of the Board of County Commissioners, you see 1 in 5 are particularly pleased with how you're working, but you got more than twice as many who actually think you're doing things right. So all in all, the county looks like it's definitely very healthy from the public's perspective. As far as delivery of major services, we have residents rate pretty much all the major categories that you provide or are involved with. And you'll notice that your parks, trails, and open spaces, water quality issues, animal safety, snow removal, wildlife protection. I won't read the whole list to you, but all of these items, which is over half the list, have 75% or more giving positive ratings. The issues that our people are more concerned about: management of growth, code violations, process for conducting inspections, and obtaining permits. You can see that's actually one of the only things on the survey where you have more than 40% giving negative ratings. But all in all, your ratings when it comes to, remember, at the end of the day, there may be some individual services that rate lower, but at the end of the day, the overall rating is 75% positive, which is a real good finding.
So when you say, when we look at managing growth, back to your earlier slide, when you, those respondents, way back, the respondents to the survey, were they all in unincorporated Pitkin County, or were some within the municipalities?
It'd be a mix. So we have people both inside and outside. So it's a random sample of everyone, so it's proportional to the county's population.
Well, and George, on that map, there's quite a number of surveyors, people that were surveyed that are from the city, and that was one of my things is there a confusion among the city growth versus what's happening in the county as far as growth when those respondents are seeing all this growth in their face?
Yeah, I mean, there's always also a confusion in terms of what services the city provides versus what services the county provides. So there's confusion there. So it'll be interesting, I guess, in your larger report, you're able to break out
in fact, at the
by
end,
unincorporated areas and the responses versus incorporated.
Exactly. So if that's something you'd like, there's some maps that are already done by zip code. So you can take a look at the maps by zip code, but if you need more data, just let Pat know and we can do some more.
Yeah, the other thing, George, that jumped out at me too was it's, we're not good at managing growth, but they want us to speed up the permitting process. So it kind of, how does that jive together? You want us to speed it up over here and slow it down over there, so.
And again, that's another indicator of I'm here, kind of focused on. I want to be able to do my development, get my improvements.
But slow it down over there.
Exactly. So.
Or where those answers came from? Did they come from within the city limits of Aspen or Snow?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but we can certainly.
Yeah, and is that where their permitting is getting snagged?
Here's some of your notable long-term trends. Actually, I looked at things back to 2004. A number of things. The airport economic sustainability, though important, has gone up 21%. Your health and human services, 10%. Mass transit, senior services, even water quality and quantity availability is up 5%. Process for conducting inspections is kind of one area. And much of that decrease was actually just in the last 2 years. In fact, if you look at the short-term trends, which is the next slide, you'll see the process for conducting inspections dropped 7% from 2 years ago. So that's actually really more a short term. How the county is managing growth, long term or short term, we've also seen these two issues grow as they're concerned to residents. But snow removal went up 16% from 2 years ago. Stormwater runoff management up 10%, and your efforts to promote renewable efficient energy are up 5%. So definitely kind of a mix, but all in all, doing well. When it comes to how you compare to other communities, this is usually where it gets very difficult for me in communities that don't perform well. Fortunately, you're setting the standard. I want to just highlight this one here. Overall value for taxes. Remember I said you're at 66%? The average small community in the United States is at 38%, all communities at 42%. So you're doing exceptionally well when it comes to providing good value. And the quality of your services are 24% above the national average for smaller communities, and almost 20% above the national average in general. So you're definitely doing some things right when it comes to not only are you providing Hilton quality service, you're providing it at Motel 6 price. That's at the end of the day, good value at great price for residents. When it comes to how you're doing in public safety, residents feel very safe here. Visibility of sheriffs, how quickly folks respond, all of these items rate very, very well compared to other communities. And you're doing a great job of keeping folks informed, and a much better job on average of giving folks opportunities to participate in local government. And we found that most people don't want to come to meetings unless there's something they really have to get involved in, but they want to know they could come if they wanted to. And so the fact that you're now airing this and putting it out so people can watch, that's one of those signs that typically helps make people feel like they can participate if they want to, even if they choose not to. That's usually the most important factor on this opportunities to participate. When it comes to things that you can do better, we actually ask residents to rate all of those major services, and you can see the top two: managing growth, economic sustainability. And so given the importance of this in your questions today, we'll try to break that out for you by rural, unincorporated versus incorporated, to see if there's really a difference. My sense is there may be some difference, but this will probably still be important for people in rural areas because they're probably affected by what's going on in the incorporated areas. They may just not be able to distinguish the difference, and that's very common.
Plus, it's interesting when so much of our economic sustainability centers around the construction industry. Right. So if we cut back one, it's definitely going to the same thing again. And
sometimes as leaders, you just know that in the short term, things are going to go down. Whenever we see a city or a county do a major investment in their roadway network, satisfaction with conditions of streets all drops. Traffic flow all drops. But when they're done, they all go back up. And so that's one of the challenges, is kind of being able to manage to make sure that you're aware of the concerns, but being able to manage it in the short term. There may be some higher levels of dissatisfaction as you make those improvements. So this is just a way to look at the data. If you're kind of a right blame person, you want to kind of look left to right. The items on the right are those that are more important on average than the ones that are on the left. So like animal safety, management of stormwater runoff, not as important, whereas you see management of growth is by far the most important, followed by economic sustainability. The other thing is you look from bottom to top, and that's really how well you're doing. And the items on the bottom get lower ratings than those on the top. And we identify those over here that are really, this is really close to the line, but the further you get over to the right in this quadrant, the more opportunities there are to enhance overall satisfaction with the county, either by investing or communicating what you're doing in those areas. And so the better you let folks know how you're managing growth, the better you let folks know about how the county's involved in promoting economic sustainability, that will actually enhance the brand that the county, because those two issues are both really important and they're rated relatively low compared to some of the other items now. But all in all, your resources are very well allocated given the priorities that residents place on these different services. This is the same information for anybody who's a left brain person and wants a list. So if you want a picture, this is for you, and it's presented both ways in the report. This goes basically first to last, and you can see managing growth, economic sustainability is next, and then permits is actually kind of rounds out the top three. Most of these other items, either the importance is relatively low or the satisfaction is so high that frankly people aren't that concerned. So you're doing a good job pretty much in all other areas. As far as some of the specific subcategories of the survey, since we have a little extra time today, I wanted to just share with those because I thought there's some things really to share. Overall level of benefit that folks receive for various water resources. You can see that great benefit for, pretty much all of the areas that we looked at. And what impressed me, though, is how attitudes about it have changed. And you can see that compared to last time, people are much more likely to think that there's either great or some benefit from pretty much everything that we assessed on the survey. So people are feeling better or feeling more benefits about what's being done in these different areas compared to 2 years ago. On zoning issues, you can see that we looked at a wide variety of things for benefits that people could receive from doing different initiatives, everything from limiting density on house size to restricting the location and type of development. And you can see a lot of folks see benefits for all of those. So there was really nothing that people didn't see benefits for. And compared to last time, you can see that people saw even greater benefits. So the management of growth in some ways may be pushing some sensitivity for people to be more willing to accept some of these initiatives because they're more concerned about them than they were a couple years ago. As far as landfill and recycling, we asked folks whether or not they'd use recycling centers, and what was neat is you had over 80% of folks have used them, and then you can actually indicate which types of services they use, whether the trash hauler provides it, or you can see Rio Grande, Pitkin County, Aspen, and the waste management facility. When we then ask folks' satisfaction with landfill and recycling services, you can see all areas rated very well. There was very little dissatisfaction. And when you look at how things have changed from last time, overall statistically, satisfaction's about the same. It was a little bit higher for landfill products for sale, the use it again lot at the landfill, a little bit lower for a couple of the other items. But all in all, your ratings continue to be very good, and they haven't changed that much since the last survey. And then when we asked folks kind of the priorities, you can see the top priority was recycling drop-off centers, but the satisfaction is 64%. So when we do our analysis, it's electronic recycling actually gives you the most opportunity for improvement. So if you're going to emphasize kind of what your communications are or even what you're doing, you're probably going to get more return on overall satisfaction with the county with regard to landfill and recycling by placing a little bit more emphasis on electronic. It's statistically not that big of a difference. We have a threshold of 0.2, but you can see drop-off recycling centers are just below that. But those are definitely the two areas I'd recommend emphasizing within this category moving forward. On the personal safety side, some of the notes you saw before in your comparative safety numbers, it's not a real surprise that people feel very safe here. In fact, almost nobody felt dissatisfied with their personal safety issues in really any of the areas that were assessed. Biggest concerns have to do with domestic violence. So in other words, that's one of the things that people are a little bit more concerned, but that's again probably what people are hearing has happened with others. But you can see all in all, as far as walking in neighborhoods, at special events, places where you're actually providing security or law enforcement, each and every one of them rated very high. And when you see the trends from last time, you can see in commercial and business areas, satisfaction actually improved from 2 years ago. Walking in neighborhoods, again, statistically about the same, but it went up 1%, and at special events was actually up 5%. So things that really are a function of probably county law enforcement actually went up from the last survey. But you can see protections of adults and children from abuse and neglect and domestic violence, which is also something that you're integrated in, but not as necessarily a function of day-to-day law enforcement visibility. That shows that people are probably becoming a little more concerned about those issues compared to 2 years ago.
And Chris, I'd point out too, over the last 2 years, we've had a pretty significant public outreach campaign through the Stop Fighting It Hurts campaign and such to raise awareness. And so this might actually be viewed as a success in a way of raising awareness of domestic violence.
Actually, I'd agree with you because I've been in places that even done other things. For example, a community in the Kansas City area was getting really high maintenance for their streets, but they were about ready to crumble. So they had to do education and let folks know that, hey, if we don't get some more funds, our streets in 4 or 5, 6 years are going to be terrible. So they told everybody what was going on, and satisfaction went down. And so sometimes when you raise awareness about an issue, you'll see a decrease, but it actually shows your campaign was effective. So. And then you see when it comes to the priorities, it's probably a function of your campaign to some extent. Protection of families from domestic violence and children from abuse and neglect are the top 2 issues in this category to focus on as you move forward. So, and as far as general public safety, we had a number of areas, everything from efforts to prevent crime, quality of your text to 911, your response for mental health issues. Really no areas stand out of negativity, but you can see mental health. That's becoming nationally a greater concern, and so this may be a function. We don't have good benchmarks for mental health right now, but I have done a number of surveys, and that has generally rated lower than other areas. But your mountain rescue, professionalism of your sheriff's office, quality of local sheriff officer protection, all of those rate very, very high. And when you see the trends from last time, again, public safety is generally staying the same or getting better. Your overall quality of local sheriff office protection up 4%. How quickly the deputy responds to 911 emergencies was up 4%. And you can see most of the other areas were about the same, a little decrease, but again, nothing significant. So again, residents continue to feel very safe and they're satisfied with your public safety services. The number 1 issue in public safety actually is mental health, and that's mainly because that's the only area that has significant dissatisfaction. Most of the other areas, you can see if you look at the satisfaction ratings, the lowest one's 69%, and that's just community preparedness is a number 2 issue, but it's a distant issue relative to mental health. We also looked at transportation issues, and again, we asked folks to rate their satisfaction with everything from your shared use trails to mass transit, ease of bicycling, different locations, condition of county roads, and availability of parking. Availability of parking in a lot of communities like Aspen, where there's a lot of tourists, oftentimes it's not unusual to see that be 50%. So all in all, availability of parking from my perspective is good, though we don't have good solid benchmarks on that. But when you look at the trends from last time, you can see your shared trail use is actually up a little bit. Ease of driving in the county in winter is up, and remember the snow removal numbers were up significantly from 2 years ago. Condition of your county roadways is up 5%. Availability of parking actually improved as well. No real significant decreases. The only one that kind of stands out is ease of traveling by bicycle, and has dropped 6 points from the last survey. But all in all, most of the numbers stayed about the same. That's the only area that had a drop that was above our margin of error. And when we look at priorities, parking and the county roadways are the top 2 issues to focus on moving forward. So, and actually, I always go back and say, well, how are you doing in the things that folks are most important for? And you see, you got better in parking, got better in roadways. So even those are your top 2 priorities, you're definitely moving in the right direction because you're being responsive to what folks are concerned about. So. On the health issue side, we asked folks about their satisfaction with air quality, environmental health, community health services, on down to senior services. And again, not a lot of dissatisfaction here. About 20 to 30% or so seem to be very satisfied. Most folks, if you combine the very satisfied and satisfied, feel pretty good about all the areas that we were assessed. And again, not a lot of differences. Air quality actually went up a little bit, so did environmental health. The other 3 areas dropped a little bit. The only one, again, senior services dropped from 70 to 63%, but it was down at 55% back in 2004. So long-term doing better there. And even your health and human services, which dropped 5 points, is still up 10 points from a decade or so ago. And then when we looked at the top priorities, availability of mental health services, substance abuse services was the top issue, and senior services were second. So that mental health you'll see kind of in multiple places as you go through the survey results. As we mentioned earlier, I guess before the meeting, I was discussing some of the issues about affordability. I think this was up in my initial conclusions when I was here last time. It was definitely a concern. This is where you see a lot of red. So affordability of housing for purchase, 61% dissatisfied. Availability of affordable housing for rent, 67% dissatisfied. So definitely concerns child care, quality care for aging adults, all of those areas. Availability of employment, actually, when we look at the trends, got a little better. So not statistically significant, but it is moving in the opposite direction. But you can see the percentage of folks who were giving positive ratings back in 2014 has dropped significantly now that it's 2016 with the price and affordability related issues. So that's definitely a growing concern. We also looked at trails. And this is one that how important do you think it is to develop a hard surface trail connection between the communities of Aspen and Down Valley? You basically have a third of the community is really passionate, a third of the community is the opposite about doing that, and then 40% of the community kind of probably needs to have more information. They lean positive, which is, so if this is something that the county is planning on doing, giving people generally their rationale behind it, they'll probably lean positive to it, because you combined a 74% think it's somewhat important or very important. However, if the county does not want to do something and there's good rationale, you'd be able, but it would be a harder sell to convince people to go from somewhat important to not important. But it is somewhat split as far as the overall intensity of the response. We also asked about the importance to develop a hard surface trail between Aspen and the Rio Grande Trail. This one, you'll see a significantly higher percentage saying very important. So here, I think you're clearly leaning to strong public support. Almost half said very important. Another 38% said somewhat important. Only 1 in 5 people did not think this was important. So in this case, a lot of times when I do political polling, I'm looking at the intense positive to the intense negative response, and it's over 2 to 1, very important to not important.
You know what's interesting in that, isn't there a hard surface trail from the Intercept lot down to Stein Bridge?
Yes, yes, but it's a tough connection to.
But it's still a hard
Steep
surface
and windy,
trail.
but it is.
It is a hard surface trail.
But it's
It's a
not
hard
an
surface
easy
trail down to Upper River Road, but then you have to
Right.
go from Upper River Road up to the Rio Grande Trail. So
Right.
it's not a connection that I would call useful.
And into Aspen, it's not all hard surface.
Right, there's that stretch. I was
But
thinking,
that non-hard surface is hard enough, it's not a problem.
well, I was thinking more the question for me would be from Intercept lot to the ABC, that segment. So maybe we'll look at that next time around.
When you look
Okay.
at, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The thought is that that's too hard of a connection. Technically it's too difficult.
Right.
So it's better to just fly over to the Rio Grande Trail and then fly back from the Rio Grande Trail.
Back up the hill,
To the ABC. So you'd have 2 crossings.
down and then back up over the
No,
river.
not down. The problem is that it is down. The problem is you want a level connection and a level connection.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah, this is a great chart here, just when it comes to value that you're giving folks for property taxes, particularly the reflection of how you've rolled out your open space and trails. Almost half of folks said great benefit, both last time and this time. This time you actually have even more saying some benefit. So if you add the 29% to the 49%, you've got 78% of your residents saying great or some benefit for what they're getting out of their property taxes. Only 13%, which is the same amount as last time, didn't see benefits. But almost a 4 to 1 ratio of great benefit to those who say little or no benefit. So
That should be really reassuring to our open space and trails and ballot initiative, and for those who are out, campaigning and working on that to get this information. That's very supportive.
shows that people have confidence in what you've
Yeah.
done in the past. So As far as the Aspen and Pitkin Airport, which I flew into today and I thought was great, this is my, I guess, subtle bias. I'm supposed to be unbiased, but I thought it was great.
On this one.
And so, anyway, we asked folks which one they fly into and out of most often, and you can see the percentage using Aspen's actually gone up from 49 to 55%. Denver stayed about the same, and then you can see some of the other airports have changed a little bit. We had more people respond this time, so that was a little bit of the shift. Is we had 4% report they weren't using or didn't provide it. Last time we had 11%. So again, but being familiar with the services that are available may be having some impact on that. When we looked at satisfaction with the airport, you can see overall pretty good ratings. Costs or air travel options, I should say, not the cost, but the frequency of flights and the types of flights. That was the one area had the most negativity. That's not a real surprise, though, for a smaller regional airport. Most of the other areas rated well. Restaurant was the other area which people essentially leaned positive, but were more okay. The number one response was that neutral. If you're looking at the data, that doesn't mean they don't know. When people are answering the questions, they're rating it on a 5-point scale. So if someone gives a 3, that's an informed response, but it usually means okay. And that's kind of a way to look at that, is if you see the white, it's people aren't dissatisfied, but they haven't had a real good experience to cause them to go blue in the charts. As far as the trends, long-term, tremendous, but this is just, I don't know when the last major round of renovations was done to your airport, but typically what happens is the results go to their maximum right after the renovations are done, and then they gradually decline after that. And you can see that parking actually improved, cleanliness of the facilities, which is stayed about the same. Some of the other items have decreased a little bit. Air travel options stayed about the same, but did go up 1%. But you see long-term back to 2004, substantially better than it was over a decade ago. We also asked folks how important would a new larger terminal be, and you can see again split. 4 and 10 said it wasn't important, so this is kind of leaning a little bit the other way, where at the end of the day, you'll have folks who would like it, but only 1 in 4 people are really intense about doing this. So. And that kind of leads us to the conclusions that I started off with, is at the end of the day, you all are leading a community that people feel really good about living here. They feel like the county's moving in the right direction when you look at the percentages of how things have changed over the last decade. And I think you should perhaps be most proud of the fact that you're delivering great services at a reasonable value for your residents. And I don't know if you've set kind of those strategic indicators, but those 2 questions about overall quality of service and overall value for taxes are typically, for performance-based communities, the 2 that people care the most about in the survey. Customer service tends to be the 3rd, because that's kind of a reflection of your employees. And in all 3, you're setting the standard in a significant way compared to the average community around the country. So you're really to be commended for that. The concerns about affordability are probably is the nature of where you're at, are probably going to continue to be there. And if the affordability goes down, you probably have the opposite problem about lack of jobs and things like that. That's typically what happens in areas that are visitor focused. Is as prices rise, there's more jobs, but as prices fall of housing, that usually means that the economy is having some difficult times. So it's in some ways a trade-off. But the value, as I mentioned, that you're getting currently out of your open space and trails portion of your property tax, definitely doing a good job there. But as you move forward, continuing to manage your growth and economic sustainability are really the 2 areas to continue emphasizing, given the importance that residents place on those. So we got through that a little bit faster than I expected. There weren't as many questions as I typically get, but if there are some now, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Was there, I know you talked about the open space and trails, which is a dedicated fund. Was there any questions relating to the Healthy Community Fund?
Don't believe so.
There were some in there related to our nonprofit communities level of service, and the
Right.
Chris, for your benefit, the Healthy Community Fund is used to fund really health and mostly human service kind of nonprofit services in the community. And so while we didn't call out the Healthy Community Fund in particular, And I don't know if you recall where those are in your presentation, but I think there were some questions related to the effectiveness of the services provided, and those you could probably tie, even though there may be a step away to.
Yeah, it was more of a question of awareness. Everyone's very aware of open space and trails because they get utilized and they're very visible. Healthy Community Fund is a little different in terms of how it gets segmented and who actually uses it versus the respondents.
And if you're interested, so we do have just a little time just to give you take a look at the map. Sometimes these can really distract us, but these are shaded by zip code. And so just as far as the county is a place to live, the dark areas are really getting intense. The average response, if the dark blue areas means the typical person or the average respondent gave an excellent rating, and then you can see the blue or the lighter blue is good. So throughout the county, people feel good or excellent, but you can see there's some areas that get more intense positive ratings than others.
May I just orient the public? I'm thinking may not be able to see
Okay.
and not know where they are on the map, but on the viewer's left is Highway 133 that cuts across the map there. That'd be the Redstone, Carbondale up to the Redstone area, and then on the other side is Highway 82 going on the right side. I was just thinking maybe you couldn't see it.
And then as a place to raise and educate children, you can kind of see some of the differences there. As a place to work, you can see actually out to the western part of the county is where you get lower ratings. And this green area, I guess that's not shaded, just so it's not one of the colors. As far as a place to seasonal reside, western area, again, good ratings, but a little bit lower. Overall quality of life, you can see again the ratings. Sense of community, pretty good, pretty even throughout the county, and then the county is moving in the right direction. So you can see again, just on this set of high-level indicators, folks out west tended to be a little bit more negative than folks in other parts of the county. Image of the county pretty consistent. And then here's the management of growth. You'll see the folks out here on this issue actually rate things better, whereas the folks in the core areas tend to be a little bit lower. And then I won't go through all of these, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little orientation.
And what's that green, that pale green?
Green, this is, I think, the park or the national.
That forest, U.S.
yeah,
forest?
National
Okay,
Forest area,
yeah.
this area here. So we didn't shade that area. So, but you do have a little piece up here. I think there were a couple of
Right.
respondents up in that area. But again, I didn't know if there were specific questions, but you can
What
see
was the one that had that very dissatisfied, it had that reddish?
this area
Yeah.
down here. This is the process for obtaining
Oh.
permits. So you can see that rates-
Interesting.
yeah, out there.
Yeah, and that probably makes sense if you think about, right, we have we have had a pretty paper-oriented process, and you have to come all the way into Aspen, and so for folks in the western part of the county, it means going down to Carbondale and back up, and so we are working right now and are close to the electronic submittals, which in electronic review, which I think hopefully in future surveys will help with that. And it may also speak to some of the opportunities we've been exploring for satellite facilities in the future too.
Well, and the other thing too, when we were talking about that same vein about what we're doing in community development, not only are we trying to do things more electronically, but we also now have a code enforcement officer. We now have increased our inspection staff. So in the last 6 months, we've been moving in that direction to remedy those major concerns. So I think that's interesting that we were kind of ahead of that curve talking about it. Then the survey came in, and now we're instituting what we were talking about before the survey. So I think that'll be definitely reflected in the next survey. So
One of the things I see in organizations that are really, taking steps ahead of where the needs are, and so you're anticipating that with all the electronic changes that you need to have more electronic permitting. That just shows that you're in touch. And so sometimes what happens is public perceptions trail that because
Right.
people aren't getting a permit every day. The last time they got a permit might have been 5 or 10 years ago, and people remember
Right.
that for a long time. And so that's why. So some of
yes,
these,
they do.
So what we don't have in the survey is we didn't ask everybody when the last time was they had some interactions, and so what happens is sometimes people have one opportunity to make an impression, and so some of your services that aren't as used as widely, if there historically were challenges with them, it takes time to change those perceptions.
Right,
so-
and that's kind of the same area that said we're doing well for managing growth. So we're having a hard time getting a permit, but you're doing a great job managing growth. Well, that's because it's a hard time getting a permit.
Yeah, I see where that one was.
Is that Meredith? Is that little blue sliver up
Yeah.
there?
That-
They're just happy
They're
little
happy
campers
people
up
up
there.
there. Yes.
They sure are, and we won't ask why.
So, and there's about 100 maps, so I won't go through them all. But if you have
There's,
questions,
wait, there's the growth one. Yeah, see, most of that.
So they're happy over here with management of growth, but they don't like the process.
They like our
for
permitting
permits.
process.
So, but
Interesting.
But if you have things that you can't pull out of the maps or need additional analysis, Pat knows how to get in touch with me, and we'll be happy to give you whatever additional data you might need. So, any other questions?
Well, Chris, and you, if I miss this, I'm sorry, but you guys have been doing a lot of more recent survey work that was not reflected in the benchmarking.
A great point.
Would you be able to comment
Yeah,
on
our
that?
benchmarking database is updated every fall. And so right now we're in the process of we do a national survey each year of about 4,000 U.S. residents, and those become kind of the basis for how you compare to other cities of comparable size and also a national average. What we've noticed is since kind of the first part of this year, I noticed that almost every time I did a presentation, the results had gone down from the last couple of years. And so it caused me to have our staff do some research to find out, well, what's the pattern? And since last February, of about the 100 and some surveys that we've done, 8 out of 10 have actually seen decreases from the previous survey, which might have been done a year, 2, some cases 3 years before. So we're anticipating that this year's benchmarks will likely be lower, and that's probably just a function of national attitudes and things like that. Oftentimes when there's a presidential election or there's challenges overseas, that tends to cause people to feel a less positive across the board. And so if just 3% of the people feel less positive, you see a 3% decrease. And so that's why I was trying to emphasize that some of your decreases, though they went down 2 or 3%, if they're less than the margin of error, which is almost 5% for your survey, I wouldn't be too concerned about it.
You also mentioned when we were talking earlier, I'm not going to name the city, but it was a large city whose elected officials had a significantly low rating, with 9%. So in thinking about that, even though it was a large city that has much different issues than we do, made me feel pretty good. 9%, that's not a lot of confidence in your constituency.
Any further questions?
This is great information.
So how do we get the complete survey?
I've got it on a thumb drive, and I'll email it to you if you want.
Okay, so, and that's available to the public also?
We're going to make it available.
I usually put it up on the website and publicize as such. I'll put a little, I could even put a press release out that's what we're doing.
That'd be great.
Put it on social media.
What
Usually-
website is that?
It's www.pitkincounty.com.
And they can find the information from the survey at that site.
Yes. As soon as I get it there. Give me a minute.
Steve?
My question would be, how can the county effectively use this information? Will we have different staff in different departments look at it and see how it applies to them? Will we as a board look at it and come up with ideas? What's the strategy?
Yeah, so at a staff level, what we've done in the past and we'll do is in an upcoming staff meeting, we'll review these results. We'll also talk about these results as we're considering budget. You know, what we're really looking for is just a consistent way for us to go out and be in touch and, you know, see are we having any major shifts, or to Chris's point, any major disconnects between where we're focusing our efforts and what we're hearing from our community. I think what we're seeing right now in this survey is that isn't necessarily the case, that there are some things that we have in the pipeline that we hope will positively move the needle, and we'll be tracking that in future surveys. But we're going to need to spend some time at the staff level with the final document and report, which Pat, you now have and will distribute to all of us. And you'll see this information popping up at various times during budget and when we come in to talk to you. So for example, the last survey, I think similarly we had heard about concerns with our responsiveness on the inspections and whatnot. That led to a lot of effort, both to staff up so that we could be more responsive and bring those review times into a tighter window. We think that we're achieving that now, although it may not be reflected in our results yet. As Chris said, on some of these you may need a longer timeline to see that. There's a longer lag. We've also continued to invest in the electronic permit review, and we also did a major revision of our fee schedule to support those efforts. We'll be continuing to refine that, and so you'll see us. And I don't know if you remember, Steve, we actually brought back these survey results as one of the reasons that we're pursuing these various efforts and requests. As we look at these, we'll be doing the same thing. I'd imagine that they, particularly the satisfaction important matrices, will pop up as you guys have future retreats and such. I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah.
Any further questions for Chris or Pat? Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
appreciate
That
it.
was enlightening.
Good information. Thank you. And actually, I felt better after hearing you explain things that I did when I looked through the slides that Mr. Peacock sent me last night. I had a lot more negative questions, and you cleared those up for me.
I guess that's
So-
why they have me come out.
I
Yeah,
know, I
that's right.
really appreciate that. I'm feeling much better.
Well, anyway, thanks for having me.
thanks, Chris.
Thank you. So are we ready to review the future agendas?
We can do that. I just have a few items for you. So earlier this month, there was a joint meeting between our Open Space and Trails Board and the city's Open Space and Trails Board, and at that joint meeting, there were representatives from the music school and country day school that had made a presentation and started a dialogue about the possibility of trying to maybe reprioritize or prioritize the Castle Creek Trail project that we currently have scheduled in our plans to begin in 2018. We thought it would be good to do a work session. We have time on October 4th just to bring the board, make sure we're all on the same page, as I think you are going to start hearing from this constituency.
We
and I think
already
already
are.
have heard from this constituency, both to bring the board up to speed on where staff is at in our planning for that project, but also provide some time for the interested community group that's starting to organize, just to have the same discussion with you that they had with the Open Space and Trails Board, so that we're all on the same page as far as what the concerns are and where we're at in that process.
George?
I think that's fine, but if you're going to allow sort of a public presentation on one side, we should afford the other side that same, because there's going to be opposition that we all know of, and we might as well get it all out at the same time. That we should not not acknowledge the other group.
I'm not sure how we could do that, since there's no caucus over there right now.
Well, I'm just saying, if it's going to be a public meeting, there will be people there, and we should afford them the same
At
opportunity.
least acknowledge that and give them an opportunity to speak if
If
they
we know
so
who to
wish.
reach out to. Yeah.
And I think that's appropriate. I think it's an issue that is going to be a conversation going in, particularly to budget this year, and so I think it'd be good to afford time to, whether it's offering both sides and
Oh, yeah.
an update. I think we'd feel better about doing it that way than having the conversation happen ad hoc out in the community.
So, John, are you suggesting that the conversation at that joint open space and trails meeting suggested we move up the schedule?
That's correct. And so that is going to require coordination from both the city and county. And so I would think that it would lead to potentially a future conversation at a joint meeting. This would be an opportunity for us to do a work session so that you can hear those same concerns and requests and where staff is at so that you're prepared for any future discussion.
Okay. October 4th.
October 4th is when we're going to look at doing that. If you're okay, we'll go ahead and try and make contacts with at least the interested stakeholders who have already been in touch with us. Then a little bit closer in, next week, it looks like our schedule is probably going to change. We've had some additional items to add to the executive session. I don't know if the board would prefer starting earlier or maybe trying to do a longer exec at the end of the day. My sense is, based on what we're starting to see from scheduling from the attorney's office and such, we may need 2 hours of exec time. So we could start at 9 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock. Or we could go a little bit longer in the afternoon, or we could even split exec to do some in the morning and some at the end of the day, which is what we did last time.
What do we just did board updates for our committees last week.
Those will come off.
Okay, so, and I don't know, because we have a whole hour at the end of the day, so that I don't know if we need that hour for updates.
It says department updates.
Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing specific in there, so I don't.
No, I don't think you are going to need that hour, and so we could add an hour of exec at the end of the day, do it at the beginning and do it at the end.
Makes sense to me. I mean, I hate staff having to run up and down Valley now, but maybe they can use my office across at the jail.
Okay.
Well, the only problem running till 5 is if there's a P&Z meeting. I don't like leaving this room at 5 when the P&Z is already here, so.
So with exec, Michael, we'll be scheduling a smaller meeting room anyway at 4 o'clock for the board to adjourn to.
In the tower?
If it's ready, we still are getting that room put back together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I go for the
Does
split.
everybody agree with that?
Well, we had talked about moving the Independence Pass discussion to before the CDOT meeting, possibly, but it still shows it as being in the afternoon.
Okay.
So, and I guess the logic behind that was we would have that discussion and then could talk to CDOT about it when they are here.
Right. And my sense is we may not need that full hour on personnel. I don't know. It's up to you guys.
So
I
we're
guess.
doing John's evaluation, and I told him we're going to drag it out as long as we can. I don't think we need the whole hour for John's evaluation, but
Well, so do we agree in moving up the Independence Pass discussion?
Yeah, that is a request that just didn't get
Then we won't
reflected.
need
If that's
the full hour
possible.
For John. So the determination is we have enough time for the day.
If CDOT and Independence Pass Foundation can make that change, that's the only outliers. There's a lot of people that are counting on those times coming from Grand Junction, so.
Oh, CDOT is part of that conversation on Independence Pass.
Yes.
Okay, that is
Oh,
why
so they're
it
gonna
didn't change,
stay-
because you guys had wanted CDOT to be involved in that conversation.
They're going to stay after lunch for that discussion? Okay,
Yes.
awesome.
And that was Brian Pettit. Probably couldn't be heard on the live.
are we then supplying lunch for CDOT too, which would be nice?
We were not.
Can we do that? Since we're asking them to leave the room and come back in after lunch, it would make more sense if we just.
Is it, Brian, is it two different groups? Usually our CDOT, we have the commissioner come and we have a different level of staff versus perhaps that will be in the conversation with Independence Pass.
What I can tell you is the regional engineer and the traffic division of CDOT will stay for that second at the afternoon. I don't know if David Eller, our regional transportation director, would stay for that conversation or not. But I know many times they travel together
Right.
because they're all coming from Grand Junction. So David may stay for that conversation because I think he's interested in Independence Pass and its functionality.
And do we know if the Transportation Commissioner will be coming, our new representative?
That I don't know.
We can check on that, and certainly if we have a large contingent staying over, we can bring sandwiches in and.
Okay,
and
so
have
staff will get that squared
Yeah.
away. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
And that is all I had on future agendas.
Anyone else with future agendas? George?
Yeah, October 12th is Yom Kippur. And last year we had a regular meeting, and it really impacted some people. And we should honor, that's a high holy day for the Jewish faith, and we should not have a meeting that day. If there's anything that's specific that we need for action items, perhaps we could have a special meeting on Tuesday, the day before, because that's light.
And right now, George, we do just have one item, which is a second reading, and I think if the board is open to that, we could
Move that to
move that
Tuesday?
around.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Thank you for bringing that up.
So we'll just call a special meeting on Tuesday and do that one vote. That's a good idea, George. I have one thing.
Patty?
It's actually a future agenda item for this week. It's kind of a public service announcement.
This week?
It's for Thursday night, just so everybody knows. So I'm going to be attending. I don't know if anybody else is going to attend. It's a candidate forum on public lands. It's at the 3rd Street Center in Carbondale, starting at 6:30. It's a good opportunity. We have the United States Congress candidates are going to be there. Candidates for Board of County Commissioners in Pitkin, Eagle, and Garfield will be there. Also, I think Millie Hamner and her opposition will be there to discuss issues related to public lands. It starts at 6:30, but there's reception with food starting at 5:45, and again, that's at the 3rd Street Center in Carbondale, and it's this Thursday night. I'm going to be attending. I didn't know if anybody else.
Yeah.
Steve will be there. George, are you coming down? Okay, so it'll just be the two of us, because I know Rachel would be there, but she's out of town.
Thank you, Patty. Any further agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to, what should we move on to? Review of Redstone Coke ovens? Does that sound good?
Are you guys ready to go?
This is a supplemental budget request.
Another one.
It is.
Okay, bring it on. And
Great.
please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Brian Pettum, the Public Works Director for the county.
I'm Melissa Sever. I'm Public Works Weed Management. So today before you is a supplemental request for the Phase 2 Coke Ovens project. Just a little history on the Coke Ovens. This project started back in around 2009, and after decades of the ovens not being used, they deteriorated due to weather, erosion, and vandalism. And so staff acquired grant funding to complete a restoration and stabilization project of 65 of the ovens. 4 of them were restored back to their original condition in the 1900s, and the rest were stabilized. With the support of the Redstone community, we were fortunate to have completed such a large historic preservation project while keeping the integrity of our past. So this project was always anticipated to be 2-phased. The first phase being restoration, stabilization, and now the second phase. The second phase is going to consist of directing traffic safely off of Highway 133 into a dedicated parking area. We'll have a walking trail, landscaping, and then a wharf wall just to ensure the preservation of the work that has already been completed to date. All of this effort will involve the community and CDOT, lots of outreach and input. They were a huge contributor during the first phase, and we hope that they will continue to work with us and help us along with the next phase. We received some grant funding from the Transportation Alternative Program, TAP, and this grant requires a 20% local match to fulfill the total cost of the project. So we are requesting to fund the local match from the Park Dedication Fee Fund balance. This is the final component to rehabilitate the site. So with that, I'd like to give it back to the board for questions.
Do we have any diagrams on exactly what 300 and some odd dollars is going to go for?
Well, not right now. So the idea is that we would go through planning and public outreach this winter. We'd come back to the board with that design after it's completed, and then look at construction in 2017. But before we undertook that planning effort, we wanted to make sure the board was comfortable with allocating funds toward this project. So while we don't have explicit detail on what that project looks like, we'll be bringing that back to the board. Probably, I'm hoping late winter, we would have something for the board to review.
So we can give tentative okay for some budget set aside of this amount, but we wouldn't necessarily be spending this amount. Is that what you're saying?
Ultimately, it would be spent on the construction in 2017.
But we don't know what we're constructing yet.
Well, in 2007, we actually had received a grant from Preserve America, and we hired the blue-green firm to do a complete diagram of the existing of our original plan. Redstone and CDOT are now thinking about a left-hand turn lane into the boulevard, which actually makes us revamp our plans. And so right now we have documents on what the plan and the landscaping and how much everything will cost, but we need to revamp that to move a parking lot possibly behind the ovens to get traffic safely back behind the ovens, just anticipating for a left-hand turn lane.
Okay, so it's pretty complicated. I still don't quite understand.
Yeah,
Yes, John.
so Michael, I think to your point, the final scope of the project has not been set yet. However, we have received a grant both for planning and development. This would meet our obligation for matching that grant so that we can go forward with the planning and public outreach with some confidence that the board is comfortable with that appropriation and with that match, and that we could execute a project that could be scoped within that amount. Or if the board in the future, if the design comes back with an amenity that the board would like to fund otherwise, we'd have to look at that time. But this gets us to that grant match and anticipation that we'd be expending that on the design and the construction in the future.
So far we're looking at some access issues and some parking issues for the coke ovens. So visitors
Correct.
can use the coke or view the coke ovens more easily. Yes, Steve?
Does this include any safety considerations for pedestrians crossing Highway 133? Because some people park at our new park and then they see the coke ovens and they want to walk over there. There will be people over at the coke ovens who will probably say, well, let's walk through the park on the other side of the road and into town. So I think that we will have, there's a pedestrian safety issue there, and at some point I think we should address that. And maybe if they're adding a left turn lane, it might be part of that project to make some sort of a defined crosswalk area, but I don't think it fits into the scope of this, but perhaps it does.
Yeah, it was not contemplated within the scope of this project. This was really site-specific for the coke ovens, and the idea there is to create safer parking for people to look at the site. I think we have to work more closely with CDOT on a pedestrian crossing. I think that's a little more challenging in a zone where speeds are 55 miles an hour on 133.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't be using the funds for that at this point.
That's correct.
But it seems to me we've created two attractions on either side of the road. And Steve's right. Some consideration needs to be given to pedestrian traffic there. So, and I don't know when exactly that's going to happen, but it should happen probably. And so how do we feel about this? Yes, Patty?
Seeing the activity on both sides, it's actually really fascinating to walk through the crowds in front of the Cocons and listen to their conversations there. Because people used to just drive by and go, what the heck is that? Now they pull in and go, oh, this is what this is. I've been driving by it for years and I never knew what those structures were. So I think it's great. And I remember that broader plan from years ago when we had the full-scale design and we sectioned it out. And I think it's much much needed, the protection of the restorations we've done and the traffic safety. And I think at some point we do need to, it's really hard to put a raised crosswalk in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. I think people have been slowing down through that section more because of the traffic coming and going to the boulevard, the park, and to the coke ovens. So I don't know if a simple sidewalk would be helpful or more danger, but I think it's something we should discuss at some point.
Yes.
Are we in favor now of this?
I definitely think we need to move this forward.
Okay, we're in favor of it. But
Great.
we need to see a plan.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be great.
And what this helps us do is to communicate to our partners in CDOT and secure that grant funding. So I appreciate that. And we'll bring a plan back this winter.
Can you tell me what coke is?
It's a refined coal product. So the anthracite coal that came out of, this is what I know about it. The anthracite coal that came out of the coal mines up Coal Creek would be put into the ovens and heated to a high temperature. Through pressure and temperature, the coking process would create a fuel that's much more efficient and would heat at a higher temperature, and then that would be shipped over to Leadville, other places that were processing iron ore.
Fascinating.
I always thought that coke was one of the compounds also in the steel industry.
Yes.
Isn't there a steel that comes in there somewhere along the...
With molybdenum,
No, with I thought coke was part of that too. That
Well, it's
they,
a fuel that's
yeah,
probably
it
used
might
in
have been the
refining.
fuel in the refining of the steel. So yeah.
Okay.
great.
Okay, we'll need a sign of what the hell coke is too.
I think it's actually up there.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Where are we?
Well, Michael, we're running significantly ahead of schedule. I've just emailed folks who were scheduled to come in during your open discussion. I think it'd be appropriate if the board wanted a break now to take that, or we could go into board open discussion and see if there are any items.
I wanted to discuss the email we received from Susanna Reed about the Redstone Castle. George will be back.
We can do it without George, or
Yeah, it's his choice.
okay. Okay, well, shoot.
Did you see Susanna Reed's? Yeah. So I don't think that there's anything we can do but keep an eye on it. And it's an issue of the Redstone Castle's come up for sale again. There appears to be an offer or somebody who's interested. I don't know anything more. I mean, she didn't really get into the details. I just think it's something we as a board, because it's happened so many times in my tenure here that it goes up for sale, it goes up for foreclosure, it goes up, in the tax block. But I just think it's something we need to keep an eye on, and if there's anything we can do, I'm unaware of it.
I think so. The as I recall the email, I think the concern is that the Redstone Castle is going up to auction. There's a $2 million reserve, is what staff understands at this point. We do have historic protections basically on the property. I think there's always a concern when a new owner comes in about actually exercising those restrictions and such. Outside of performing our due diligence on those protections we already have in place, I don't know that there's an alternative unless there is an entity, whether it be a nonprofit historic entity or the county itself that would want to make that purchase. That's certainly not something that I've looked at, and
I'm not
something
suggesting
I'd be
the county
prepared
buy
to
it.
recommend. But I do think we do have some protections that we will need to exercise. And,
But I think it's on the state and the federal historic designation, right?
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
it might have dual protections, but yeah, I think the county's been buying enough stuff lately. I don't think we need to buy a castle, but we might be buying a bar, so I just think keeping an eye on it is appropriate.
Is there any protection of the castle itself in terms of if somebody doesn't buy? I mean, the real problem is deterioration over time. Do we have any protections of that, or can it be allowed to go back to earth?
Yeah, I think we'd probably want our historic preservation staff in, but I think the protections that we have are more restrictions about what can be done with the
Yes.
property rather than protections or resources for preservation of the property.
Okay, but maybe we could get our staff to look into that.
Yeah.
Okay, agreed?
So it just doesn't become demolished by
Well, if
neglect.
there's a leak in the roof and nobody
Because
cares.
they've had big issues in the
Yeah.
past with that.
and that it would deteriorate
Yeah.
through neglect.
The, I'm catching the end of it, so I had to meet with Brian on CDOT stuff, but the purchase of the castle is the easy part. The restoration and the upkeep and the maintenance is probably 5 times the cost of what it will be sold for. It's worse than owning a boat in terms of having money go into the water, and it's something that I would hope and think that the State Historical Society and the National Historical Society would look at funds, but I think it's way too big a project for the county to look at. I mean, we would never have even been able to protect the Emma town site without the grants. We know how much that costs, and all we did was just stabilize it without actually having any use. So I think there's a realistic we have to be realistic about this in terms of what the county can afford to do and able to do with our resources.
I think we're not asking that. I think we're just asking maybe for Susanna Reed to let us know what we can do for somebody else as far as their, not letting it just be neglected to the point where it falls in on itself. What can we do to ensure that there's some work done on it by whoever the new owner might be?
Yeah, I mean, one of the largest costs in recent years was having to put in the septic,
Yeah.
not being able to hook into the Redstone sand and water sanitation. That was a huge cost. So that's
Always something.
that's a problem.
Just an amazing structure, though.
Yeah, we would hope that the state would play a big role in that. So.
Right. Okay.
That's all I had for open
What else?
discussion.
Anything else for open
Yeah, an
discussion?
open discussion. This came to forefront the other day from a constituent who is regularly up on Maroon Creek. And we know how the traffic has continued to increase, certainly from the T-Lazy 7 going up between buses and cars and people who are walking and bicyclists. And what he told me was there's actually, at least from T-Lazy 7 up, there really is no signage up there for speed limit signage, nor a share the road signage. He said that the only speed signage on that road is somewhere around Highlands, and there's really no share the road. So we should look at adding signage up there for both of those. And I don't even know what the speed limit is on that road as you're going up.
Yeah.
Depends if you're going up or down.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. No, that's true. I mean, because bicyclists are going down
Yeah.
probably faster than cars.
Yep.
But there's lack of awareness that between bikes and cars and buses, and as they pass each other, that there is safety concerns, and we should have some look at some adequate signages.
There's a moose sign and a marmot sign, I think.
Yeah, it's a moose sign, so it's great. Watch out for moose, but how about that car that's
It's just smashed into it.
Maybe we should build a soft track trail for the cars and buses to go on, and everybody else can go on the pavement.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I
that's a-
think
that's a-
I think
that's a
shared
good
road
concern, though.
sign and the speed limit signage, perhaps by Highlands, and then also by T-Lazy 7 as the two sort of key areas to raise awareness.
That's a good idea, George. Okay, any other open discussion? Steve?
Yeah, I got a communication from the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, and this regards the EPA's formal comment period on the Clean Power Plan. Boulder County at least is submitting their own county's comments, but the CC4CA has asked if for the different municipalities and counties in the organization to poll the boards to see if they would like to submit a comment from the entire coalition, which would carry more weight if a group of counties and municipalities all signed on to a letter. And the feedback has been that other towns and counties are saying it's okay to have the coalition draft a letter, and I believe we would get to see the letter before it's sent, but I just wanted to get a thumbs up from the board to proceed in that manner. Now, we could also submit our own comments from the county if we desire to do that. But this way, we could have somebody from the Rocky Mountain Climate Coalition would be drafting the letter that we could sign on to, and that would be an easy way to get a good comments into the EPA.
So this is an anti-global warming letter?
No, this is supporting the
Clean power.
Clean Power Plan, which Colorado is implementing. The EPA, some of the states filed suit and didn't want to implement the Clean Power Plan. So it's actually supporting this, and writing the letter is supporting the Clean Power Plan, which leads to a reduction in carbon emissions.
Okay. So how does the board feel about it?
Well, I think since we're a member of the coalition, we should at least have the opportunity to see the letter and decide if we want to sign on, but I think we should support them creating a letter and bringing it back to us.
George? Yeah. So
Okay.
go ahead, we'll do that. Let's see the letter, we'll sign on probably. Any other open discussion? So our next meeting is scheduled for 3. What do you think? Are they going to be able to make it before 3?
I believe so. I've heard from Kathy Hall. I haven't heard back from Janice or John yet, but if you take a break, I will try and get in touch with them.
Kathy's coming. It says just airport here.
Kathy
Sorry,
Hall's
Kathy
coming
Hall
in.
at the end.
3:45.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Should we break till 2:45?
Half an hour?
Well, what else do we do? We have.
Well, John
gone
Kinney might
way
be
too
here,
fast.
Janice might be over.
And see if I've heard from them.
But traffic is, it'll take them.
Well, Janice just has to walk over across the street.
She might be busy. You don't know.
I just think half an hour is a long time because they might be here waiting for us, so I would say 15 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll check back in 15 minutes. If somebody's here, we'll go on.
Yeah, we'll go
Okay.
on. That's perfect, Michael. And then if nobody's here, we'll take another 15. I'm going to go buy dinner.
September 20th. We're at the Bill Dunaway Community Room, and we have John Kinney, our airport manager, here to give us a presentation. John, take it away.
All right, thank you. Have about 5 items I wanted to bring the Board of County Commissioners up to speed on in terms of just the things that are happening at the airport. Some are new, and maybe 1 or 2 might be circling back. But the items specifically are the new aircraft parking configuration, which is where the air carriers park on the main terminal ramp. It's really a safety initiative, and that'll require a budget supplemental that we'll bring back to you folks because there are some costs associated with that. Second item I was going to briefly talk to you about was security initiatives. That was stemming from a security threat assessment that we did out at the airport, and we'll be coming back to you later in, next month for a budget supplement associated with that as well. And I'll talk briefly to you about aircraft de-ice pad light poles. We've got those down lower, which I think is great news. And then TSA's proposed terminal baggage screening and airline baggage makeup area, also proposed by the airlines. There's safety, but it's also kind of a throughput outcome, so a capacity, if you will. And we'll talk more about the budget supplement. And then wrapping it up with the airport environmental assessment that we've got coming up next week, which I think will be a pretty substantive issue. So the first item is the aircraft parking configuration. What we do now is we allow aircraft to power out when they board plane, button it up, and then they're getting ready to taxi out to the runway. So they actually fire the engines up and accelerate and really create some significant jet blast. And it's a hazard to passengers and equipment. So we've come up with a new design that would put it into a pushback operation. So they'd hook a tug bar and a tug up to the aircraft, push it back a safe distance, orient it properly away from the terminal building, and then fire up the engines to take off. So here's the new configuration. And I don't know if this is, I was wondering if the lights are too bright, but it looks like it's coming through well on the screen. This is the new configuration. So instead of having 8 positions going horizontal to the, or parallel to it, it's now going to be perpendicular, where it's going to be nose-in operation. So you actually gain a few more parking spots this way, which helps us out for our RONs, which is the acronym for Remain Overnight. So aircraft can, this is really what it can look like for the 7 to 9 a.m. push in the mornings during peak season. But these, will be a much safer orientation. Thank you for the lights. Better, safer orientation for aircraft coming and going into and out of the airport. What it really involves is new markings on the ramp. There will have to be some additional passenger loading ramps that we'll acquire, probably 3 more, and we'll have to do some field modifications to them so that allows it to turn at the very end and get people comfortably into and out of the aircraft. That's the new configuration that we're looking at right now. The airlines have done a safety risk assessment. The Federal Aviation Administration has done it from an air traffic control perspective, and from our perspective, we're very pleased about how they would be pushed out, and only when they're away from the terminal building where they fire up the engines.
So on that, I brought this up a few months ago, John, but now with the announcement that Delta is going to be offering some new flights, which they've done in the past, some nonstop directs from Salt Lake and I think from
LA is the other
from
one.
LA. This is taking into account those new flights, but that also adds to some of the congestion problems.
This will help with some of those congestion problems, especially when we were talking about those flights. A lot of them want to go out first thing in the morning, so they come in at night, and they'll have up to 10 aircraft parked on the ramp at once. So this allows us to safely accommodate those new numbers, but also if there's a few delays, we still have a couple more parking spots to tuck the aircraft away until they're ready to go. So it is safety, but it also does help us out with some of the capacity issues. So we'll be coming back with a budget supplement on this, and this will probably be around the $200,000 is the estimate right now.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've had some folks coming about their concerns. They think it's great we're getting more flights, but the capacity of the terminal itself. So when you first see that, it kind of scares you, thinking, oh my God, we're going to have all these planes at one time, all those people in the airport, all that baggage. But what this really is, like you said, is it's a parking lot for planes that aren't necessary. So we won't have at one time that many planes that are coming and going.
From a schedule perspective, no. But if you take the delays or
Right,
the
or
cancellations,
any unforeseen.
right, I've seen at one time 13.
But the fact is we're not, we know we have those kind of delays. We know we have the overnight planes that stay. But this is just to accommodate the unforeseen, out of our control kind of circumstances.
Right, correct. Yeah, the kind of limiting factor that you have in the terminal building, it's still about a max of 7 flights that you could simultaneous, and the definition of simultaneous is about an hour period of time where you could bring 7 through during that hour and a half period of time. That's your sterile area where you hold the passengers.
Right. And then you're
No
looking at
matter how many
luggage
more gates
capacity.
or whatever else you do, you can't change that variable.
Right.
So that's really the limiting factor. So you're right, it's more of a parking reserve.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, I see, I mean, the main benefit from this is that the jets won't have to power out. It'll take a little more human labor pushing the tug, but tugs run on electricity, right? They're electric.
Right, so it'll be,
So instead of using Jet A fuel to move a plane out of there, we're actually using some electricity that we can be much more energy efficient. Plus, I think safer and quieter, less impact on the terminal and the employees working outside there.
absolutely agree, Steve. And you know, across the street in the ABC, one of the big complaints for the homeowners over there is the jet fumes from a couple different
Right.
sources. But the power out operations will go away in that regard, and it'll be a greener operation with the tugs.
Great.
Okay, what's the next item, John?
Second item is security initiatives. We're bringing back a Board of County Commissioners budget supplemental package associated with this. We just have some improvements that we need to do from IT to some procedural and possibly staff, and we'll go more in detail with that. This might even be an item, given its sensitive security information, that we might go into executive session over. But heads up, we'll be bringing this in more detail back to you in October. But security continues to be an issue, and primarily with the insider threat, which is just an emerging situation almost on a weekly basis.
Have we addressed the issue of the fencing and the bears?
Not
To
yet. We
protect the
have
TSA guys when they come to visit us, or the
You have
FAA
that
guys?
in next year's budget.
Okay.
John, I lost attention there for about 30 seconds and you completed your presentation. It's a security, insider security threat. What is that?
That's actually where folks have a clean background, and they acquire one of these airport identification badges, and they then have access to a variety of places in the airport, and sometimes to almost every aspect of an airport, but then they have malicious intent, whether they're running guns between Atlanta and New York, which they were doing, and at sometimes having 27 fully loaded and some semi-automatic weaponry, and they were insider threats. They were airline employees working with one another between those two cities. So it's just people who get inside the system via these airport background checks and then have malicious intent.
Okay, so do you recertify that, and rather than just give it out, do you recertify it, or how do you handle that threat?
There's been a variety of changes. You know, security is a very, very layered approach so that you just don't have a single point failure. If maybe 1 or 2 or 3 systems fail, on average you have 8+ layers of security. So the TSA recently has gone to much more frequent background checks, whereas before, if, say, a year ago, maybe a shorter duration of that, if you got a airport identification badge and you were employed at that same place for 10 years, you would not go through another background check. However, your behavior could have been alarming. There's 28 different criteria in terms of specific types of felons that would make you ineligible for a 10-year period to even gain access with one of these credentialing badges. And then there's different sections inside each airport, including Aspen, that have a higher degree of scrutiny that you must pass before you can get an access system. So that is being checked more frequently than historical, and that's just kind of one aspect of them trying to vet who's in and who's not. It was on the news today that of those individuals who were supposed to be deported, yet they were giving credentials and allowed to come into the country. 2 of them were inside airports in some of the most secure portions of it. So they have since rounded them up, and they're in the process of being deported. So it's that insider threat that is the most concerning to the TSA.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the de-ice pad lighting project, there's 3 poles. I think last time I told you there was 2 poles at 50 feet, and we now are looking at 3 poles at 40 feet. And their specific location, so this is Highway 82, obviously with all the cars, and this is the existing pole with the cameras on it that the air traffic controllers use. And so the backside of the de-ice pad is right along here is where we'd have, is where we would have the 3 light poles. I apologize for that. 3 light poles in the backside of that de-ice pad. So they'll be a couple feet higher in terms of the length of the poles than the existing pole that is located, again, right here with the cameras on top. But since that is mounted onto a terrain that's a little bit higher than the de-ice pad, the light poles will actually be lower than this existing pole. And each one of the pole contains 2 lights, about 2 feet by 2 feet in terms of the lights themselves. We'll have them on a timer so they're not on all during the time. And obviously it's just for the de-icing operations to ensure that the de-icer sprays off all the contaminants, snow and ice off the aircraft before it goes to take off. So that's the goal of it. We're working with the planning community development group so that we make sure that we get as close to compliance, if not exceed, the light emission component.
And that was from a part of the FAA inspection, is that correct?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. We those were supposed to be put in when the de-ice pad was, but for some reason that was overlooked, and the airlines have since requested greater illumination out there for that reason. The proposed TSA screening and airline baggage makeup area, again, that'll be coming back to you folks in next month from airport staff in terms of a supplemental component. But what this has is really 2 parts. One was that the airlines and TSA both came to the airport administration, so we have employee safety concerns. We're having a variety of folks being hurt out there with worker comp issues because it's very manual and obstacle and a lot of twisting, lifting and twisting simultaneously to dodge some support poles. I'm not familiar with another airport that still operates this way. They put them on the bag and it goes all the way through its turns and twists into the machine, and it's not until the bag alarms that they would then take it off and then put it in a very close proximity to a surface that's very similar to the height of the bag belt. And where we are, there's gaps in a lot of areas. So the safety was one issue. And then the other was just simply the bottleneck. Over 400 bags were missing their flights on a weekly basis during our peak season. So the flights are getting out, the passengers are getting out, but the TSA throughput or screening capacity for the checked bags that go into the cargo hold of the belly of the aircraft, we're not making it because they could not screen them and then give enough time for the airlines when they receive several hundred bags into an area the size of this centerpiece of the table. They couldn't sort through and get enough onto the Chicago flight versus the Delta flight versus the Salt Lake flight, and they had to launch the aircraft. So this will also help that capacity throughput. The problem, though, is some folks have said, well, why don't you just do one improvement and not another? And it's really kind of a rolling bottleneck. So if you push on a waterbed, it comes down in one area, but it pops up in another, and that's really what's happening with this. So if you fix the TSA throughput and safety concerns, you're then going to just push that problem right into the baggage makeup area of the airlines and exacerbate their problem. So simultaneously, they both have wanted us to make some improvements. So this drawing here, if you look at the top right portion, there's a bit large, almost square box, and that represents the footprint when you walk into the terminal building of the queue lines for the airline ticketing counters. So the solid yellow line towards the bottom of that box, that's actually the ticket counters where the agents be standing and checking you in. Right behind those persons would be the gray, or excuse me, the orange, and almost kind of looks a little brownish rust color. Those are existing baggage belts. So if you go to the right-hand section, that's where American Airlines is. It's just a big L. They put it on the bags, onto that conveyor belt. It goes into the back room. And there's a CTX machine. Will that work right there? Oh, thank you. Here's a CTX machine. Thank you very much. There's a CTX machine right here. So you can see that it's completely manual, that every bag coming here has to be picked up, turned, put onto this, and then repeat the process. Whereas most places, the bag system would go right through the machine. We're not going to try to address that particular issue there for a couple different reasons. This is also an existing belt. The green is a new area that would automatically feed the majority of bags into the screening area. There's an existing machine here, an existing machine here, and then would go out. All this rust color is existing. The green is the new bag area. Right now, this bag inline or bag conveyor system goes straight and stops right here. So that's going to be eliminated, and then we'll put the turn in so it's completely automatic. This will be a third and much larger machine that will be added by the TSA, and they'll also bring the staffing with it. Then that will take it out to this new area in the green. This is a proposed baggage makeup area. There was a big carousel, and then American Airlines would also have one here. So the green is the new portions. The footprint of the terminal building will not change. It'll simply be punching a couple holes in the wall and redoing some of our baggage conveyor system, and then adding these circular race tracks down at the bottom for the baggage makeup area, so they can hold more bags and they can sort them faster. These represent the baggage carts that they would then be loaded onto and then head out to the particular aircraft. So right now it's right around 1.2 million is the price tag associated with this. We've had initial and secondary conversations with the airlines, and I've shared with them the lifespan of this project would be 5 years, and they will have to pay the freight, and they have all agreed to do so, to bring these improvements and operational efficiencies to Aspen.
Does TSA have any budget to do any of this as well?
They do not, and they started kind of drying up on that about 4 to 5 years ago, and now with the crunch on a national scale of the screeners, they've really cut back their budget in a variety of ways and put it towards more screeners. So they really can't bring any budgetary component. They will bring the staffing, and they will bring the machinery itself. Most airports, the TSA historically would put this in and then pass it on to the airports, but now they've become financially strapped and looking for the airports to put it in and then charge back to the airlines, which is kind of a standard model.
The other question I have is, given the number of baggage that doesn't make it either here because of delayed flights or going out because of these problems, do we have an outreach program to the lodging community and property management community to let them know that there may be other options in terms of getting luggage here and home via the FedEx? I mean, given the costs that the airlines have for luggage anyway, it may be pretty very competitive and much more self-assured for people just to use something like FedEx. I mean, do we have a program like that maybe help at least cut down the number of this baggage that gets stuck either direction?
We don't, George. Very interesting concept. We definitely could look into that. I mean, it's been more of almost a reactionary mode of, hey, we had problems last week, let's reach out to the chamber and talk to some of the business communities, but we definitely could make that more of a proactive posture. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Well, I know that
it's going to repeat itself this season, as you said.
I mean, the other long-term benefit is then passengers, if they're coming into Aspen or Snowmass, they have their luggage going directly to their final destination, then maybe they could take a public transportation. They wouldn't have to rent a car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something we can definitely look into. I'll get back with you guys on that.
Michael, can I add to
Yes.
this? My sister-in-law works at FedEx, and I'll tell you, at the holidays, FedEx has the luggage that they've stashed in their little office space over there is unbelievable, and they have drivers or hotel service dropping off 15, 20, 30 bags at a time. So they're already it would be great if people utilized it more, I think, but I'm not sure if FedEx can accommodate. I mean, I know a lot of people are now doing, what's the other one? The UPS. So people have been taking advantage of that, but I think it would be great if we could increase it, but we need to really make sure that people on the other end of it can handle that capacity.
John, will there be savings will there be fewer employees? Because I know when you and I were talking about this initially, when you were first thinking about it, was like you're not going to need a TSA employee or an airline employee moving the bags physically from one place to the next. That person then could go up front and be helping on the screening up front. But do you see that there would be fewer employees or more employees or the same number of employees with this system?
There might be just a couple more, but you're exactly right. To get that economy of scale and be able to take more people out of the baggage room, since it is today such a manual process, and put them back on the checkpoint. Because right now, it's a great point, Steve, that you raised, because the TSA has kind of the frailty of their operation right now is they're mandated to at least give one person off above sick leave and above vacation, or excuse me, above sick leave, gives one person off always, every day, for vacation. But if they have one person in addition to that person, just simply one, call in sick or have a workers' comp issue, we lose a lane. That's how tight the staffing is at this particular airport. So we were excited about this from that standpoint of being able to give a little bit more bench depth in case they had call-outs, legitimate sick call-outs, and not going down from 2 lanes down to 1. Because in the morning, when you have that 5 to 6 to 7 flights, if we went down to 1 lane, you'd be over 2 hours and 45 minutes for a wait time to get through that security screening checkpoint. So last year we were real lucky we didn't find ourselves in that situation, but it is fragile. So we're excited about additional people.
One other question.
Yes.
So, John, this is you're going to come before us for a budget supplement for this. However, the airlines are actually going to be paying for this.
All right, so we would absorb the cost up front, and then we would charge them back either through landing fees or a special assessment fee or rental rate increase.
Okay.
One of those 3 mechanisms.
Okay.
Okay.
The Aspen Airport, in terms of our environmental assessment, we have a very exciting meeting coming up this next Thursday, and really 3 primary discussion points. It'll be the view of the new terminal concepts from the surrounding communities. So they have some pretty impressive graphics where these terminal buildings, the 2 designs that we were bringing forward, are superimposed so that people can see when you're driving up valley and down valley via Highway 82, what it looks like from the Buttermilk perspective, what it looks from the Starwood perspective, and I think even the North 40. So that'll be one component. And then also talking about the terminal size. Balance that with our inputs of the communities, kind of what they want to see, what concerns they have, but also then the functionality of the terminal as well. And then third, we'll be talking about the findings regarding Owl Creek Road, Owl Creek Bike Path, and other resource categories. I think there was a total of 21 or 22 categories specified in this environmental assessment. So I think it'll be the most substantive discussion to date with the community, and we're really going to be asking them to take a look at some of these drawings and did we hit the mark? Where did we hit it? Did we fall short in other areas? Let us know. So there's 2 opportunities. One is with the Community Input Committee. That's in the morning. And then later that afternoon and into the evening over at the public library, in fact, in this exact room from 4:30 to 6:30, we'll have a public workshop. So we're looking forward to that and getting feedback from the community. And we'll plan on the week after getting back to give you folks an update as to what we found out that Thursday. So that'll be first one in October. This is actually the ad that's going to be starting to go out if it hasn't already started today. So we're asking people, we got some news to share. Please join us. Here are the different categories. Here's the location. And we'll have all this information that was shared in that workshop. We'll have that on our webpage within the next 24 to 48 hours after this meeting concludes. So people can't make it, they can follow along on the webpage.
Great.
So, John, again, I always ask you this. Do we have a similar public meeting up in Snowmass Village?
Do we have one planned for this time? No. Have we been up there? Yes. We could add it.
I mean, always seem to forget that we have another community out there, Snowmass Village, and which is an integral part for the airport, and it's maybe difficult for them to come into Aspen, and we should, if possible, we should offer an opportunity for them.
What does the board think?
Well, if the consultants will be here,
I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it has to be the same day, obviously, but yeah, but just to have a schedule so at least Snowmass residents know they have an opportunity to hear and listen, provide input as well.
Absolutely. Okay.
Does the board think that's a
Address
good
that.
idea?
if, I know there's a cost if the consultants have to stay an extra day, and I don't know, I think we need to look at the financial impact and the logistics, because then, we're going to be hearing from Basalt, so do we have 3 of them? I think this is such a great facility right here, and also a great opportunity for Snowmass to come in and see the library on this one, but if you could work out, it would be great. I just, we need to take it all into consideration, what the cost would be.
So how about an extra effort to get Snowmass people down here? Would that satisfy you, George?
Well, I think it'd be difficult. I mean, if they just had a meeting in Snowmass, what effort it would take to get Aspenites to go to Snowmass?
So if I could make a suggestion too, is we're going to be having more meetings as we go along in the process, I believe, John, as results come forward. And so, George, we did miss getting Snowmass on this one, but I think we can see if our consultants are available. It might be short notice at this point to schedule this meeting with Snowmass, but as we have subsequent meetings, to double those up.
I think we
If
should
that's
keep Snowmass
what the board desires. This time it may end up being a separate kind of conversation.
So what does the board think?
I agree with that. I think we should keep Snowmass in the loop. It is a short notice for the consultants, but I think Snowmass, because I remember when you went up there, when John Kenny went up there before, they were really impressed with the outreach, and I think that's a good thing to continue.
Well, I think sending John Kenny up is fine. It's a question of whether we have 2 consultant meetings all the time, because there's Snowmass. I mean, I think we have to decide on a strategy that effectively includes Snowmass, but doesn't double our effort about the airport. That's my concern. That's right. I think it's worthwhile to inform Snowmass, to get ads in the Snowmass Sun, to paste flyers all over the empty buildings up there, and but I don't think it's worth it to have our consultants go every time they come here to go up there also. I
think maybe
that's
key
the
meetings.
problem. So I don't know how we strategize that. I sympathize with that, but I don't know that we need to double our effort. I think we should reach out to people in Snowmass and say, listen, we're having these meetings. We don't want you to miss them. We'll provide transportation for you. That's cheaper than having the consultants.
Do we have any of these meetings at the AOC, in that big meeting room?
We did have one at the AOC and got a fair amount of feedback of it's too far out.
Oh, but it's perfect for snow, yeah.
Bus operations, yeah.
Yeah.
So help me here. George wants to have Snowmass included. I want to have Snowmass included, but I don't want to duplicate our consultant efforts every time we have a meeting with them. So
I don't know if
problematic.
providing transportation is the way to do it. I think better notice out there and maybe some key meetings that, we can.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to sort of identify which are the sort of the key points that you really want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to hear and provide input. It may not be every meeting, but there may be some critical times along the process of the EA. And frankly, the cost of an extra meeting is probably minuscule in terms of the cost of the entire EA, I would suspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Steve?
Yeah, I know that Snowmass Village is always they're very interested in what happens at the airport because that's essential to their economy. And if we just have the meeting here, I think double checking to make sure that, there is free transportation from there to here on the RAFTA bus. but we're in the off-season, and I'd want to make sure that the RAFTA schedule matches when the meeting time is, when people could get back there, just to make sure they don't have to sit around here for an hour if they took the bus in. I do think at some point we should have one really good meeting in Snowmass, and maybe it's not this one, maybe it would be later in the process when we're kind of, when we know more and we're kind of unrolling the whole project and showing, our preliminary designs or whatever kind of a thing. It's not that hard. It's easy to get from Snowmass Village to here.
So how about if we leave it up to the staff to generate an effective Snowmass inclusion policy?
And that's what I was going to suggest. I think I hear the interest of making sure that we manage the costs and additional effort, but that we have a meaningful outreach opportunity to ease participation for Snowmass residents and the EA. I think we can come up with a strategy if that's, I think that's why I hear the board trying to achieve.
Yeah. Is that okay, George?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, John?
We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Next on your list. Okay,
Anything else?
No, sir.
thank you very much.
How's it been going out there, just in general?
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
Pretty good. Security continues to be the driving topic. There just appears to be an emerging priority and information we're getting from the TSA. So we've been changing a lot of things and tweaking a few things. So it either balances between security, snow, ice, winter operations, and safety. And right now, the pendulum is definitely in the realm of security. So.
Well, we just had a general discussion about security. The hospital is concerned about security. RAFTA is concerned about security. The county, I think, is going to be more concerned about security, at least in terms of their new building and facilities. So I have no idea why it's bouncing up. But all of us are concerned about it. So.
Yeah, and I think in terms of a facility that gets a county-owned asset that gets both local and national attention, the airport is probably our biggest focal point. So all that conversation you're hearing is probably more concentrated for a lot of good reasons at the airport. And so you're seeing that reflected in some of the priorities in terms of what's going to be coming back for you to consider. And you'll continue to see that as a focus where we need to make some changes as we go forward. So.
John, you were talking about single point of failure. That's actually the problem with the TSA system. Once you get in to that system, you're through. You can go anywhere in the world. So so the pressures on a small airport are just as great as the pressures on a larger airport, and it's difficult. But it is, I think, quite frankly, a flaw in the system.
Yeah. And it's matching our culture and expectations up with that reality that is maybe the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you on the street out there.
So, do we have anything left for the day, John?
Yes,
Nah.
we do.
We do?
We have two items. I see Janice here for
Ingrid.
her open discussion update. And
Janice,
then
come forward,
Kathy
please.
is here ready to bring us home.
Oh, and Kathy's here too. Great.
Yeah.
The shit will hit the fan as soon as Kathy gets in.
Thank you, John.
Hi.
Good afternoon. I'm Janice Voss-Caudell, Pitkin County Clerk and Recorder. And Ingrid Gruder is our recording manager. So we're going to talk to you. We're going to bring you an update on recording today. Okay? Short and sweet. Yeah. So, saw you last week. We're going to see me again next week, just a warning. A reminder to the community that the recording department has moved. We're in the Vectra Bank in the basement at 534 East Hyman. Okay, so Vectra Bank in the basement. Okay.
Janice, just give us some background. What is recording?
It's mostly recording of public land use. Okay, so if you're buying or selling your property, grant or grantee, we keep the archives for all mostly land use records from 1881 to present. Okay? There are additional documents we record, mining claims.
Claims, marriages, all that kind of stuff. People can record just about anything they want to, but it's usually.
And so that makes it a permanent record that the public can access, so the ease of transactions, knowing somebody hasn't been married more than once at a time, that's important to a community.
That's important, and to know who owns what property and what the history is for title search.
Mostly the property.
Okay.
Marriages, usually it's a place they can go to get certified copies to prove they're married and so forth.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
And thanks for asking that, because that's a good segue in what we want to talk to you about today. We told you about the move, but we want to talk to you about what the activity in the recording department is, but we want to tell you what's going on in the future of the recording department as well. We're doing a computer conversion, something new. So we collect recording fees for each document that's recorded, and we collect doc fees. That is 10 cents collected on each $1,000 of transaction that's processed. Okay. And I want to go over the trends for the last 5 years, because that tells a story of what's going on in the real estate industry for us as well. Okay. So over the last 5 years, incrementally, recording fees tell us how many transaction sales are taking place. Okay. So the trends over the last 5 years, incrementally, it's been increasing 6%, 9%, 8%. In 2014, it decreased 20%. There were fewer transactions in 2014, 20% decrease. Back up 6% in 2015. So that tells you the number of transactions, that story. Now we collect doc fees, which is 10 cents on every 1,000. The story that tells us is, what is the value of what we're transacting? So the story over the last 5 years has been an incremental increase. 5 years ago it was not even 1%. Next year, 16% increase. So we're having large sales, value sales. There was a decrease in 2013 of 10%. Okay? Our numbers of recording went up, but our doc fees went down, meaning the value of the sales that were taking place were lower.
We're lower.
2014, that skyrocketed to 22%, and in 2015, 28 more percent. So it tells you what's going on in our market. If you want more detail of what's going on, Ingrid can tell you what's going on this year or what she's seen. But I wanted to tell you, over the last 5 years, what's happening in the real estate industry and what we're recording. 2016, we're projecting that recording fees will probably be the same, the numbers based on this last year, but what we're seeing, our doc fees are going down. So that means the value, the high value properties aren't selling like they were in the past. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I actually can jump in, because in 2015, we had 29 transactions that were 15 million or more. 10 of those were over 20 million. This year so far, we have a total of 7 15 million or more, and only 2 of them were over 20 million. So that kind of shows you where we are. Those big ones sold last year.
Yeah, we run out of big ones.
Yeah. Another example, recording fees maybe being high and the doc fees down. We maybe have done a large number of, what would you say, employee housing sales. Okay, smaller value.
Or the fractional condominiums.
The fractionals and employee housing, and actually right now a bunch of things are housing credits, so those don't have the doc fees. Yeah.
So kind of looking at it over the last 5 years, it's been a little bit up, up and then down. It's kind of evened out, actually. Yeah. Okay. That gives you an idea of the activity in real estate. Marriages. It's the season, fall. Marriages are up. Last 3 years, they've been pretty steady.
Yeah, we're just a little over where we were last year, so.
Okay. Want to talk to you a little bit about staffing as well. Staffing's great, sound, they're busy. If they're not doing transactions, what we're working on are projects. Last year, we told you that we spent $100,000 of dedicated funds. We collect a $1 surcharge fee that goes into a dedicated fund specifically for electronic recording. Right now, the phase we're working on is we imaged all documents back to 1881. From 1976 back to 1881, they were in books. We've imaged those. Staff is going through quality control checks right now. What we're preparing for is a computer conversion in February 2017. So actually, Ingrid and staff started at RFP last year. We just signed the contract in July. The next 5 months, they'll be working on the conversion, which will take place in February. We're doing the conversion. There are additional features that provide our community. One is we will be able to upload all those images back to 1881. So anywhere in the world, if you want to go online and do research on our land use records, we'll have that available in one format online, images. Now, one of the tasks the staff will have to approach after the conversion is we will upload all those images, but you will have to do book and
page or
receptionist. Staff will need to go back and index all that. And that means grantor, grantee index and push it out so you can look and research by name. Okay, so that's coming down the road. The other thing is the new software system will provide anybody in the world, anywhere, the ability to go online and then buy for 25 cents a copy. Okay, we don't have that capability. Now you have to come into our department, look for the book, and manually look for the page in a book, and then make a copy. So our goal by next spring will have everything converted and imaged into the system, but then we'll have to do indexing as well. Okay? So in the future, we'll have all that available online for search anywhere in the world. Okay. It's taken about 10 years to get there.
So I'll be your test case, and you can fly me anywhere in the world, and I'll see if it works.
There you go.
Okay. Overseas.
Right now, we spend a lot of staff time on copy requests. And then
Yeah, I
take
know.
that
It's a
out.
lot.
Yeah.
I think we spend a third FTE on copy requests. So if we can push that out and use people to do indexing, so people can conduct their own search, that'll help. Okay. So that's where we're going with technology. I just wanted to let you know what the real estate industry is doing in our world. If you have any questions.
No,
Thank you.
thanks.
Any questions on elections?
That was really great information, actually.
Yeah.
Today's our
busy.
information data day.
They're busy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, just a reminder for the community, register to vote.
And what is
Ballots are
the
coming out.
website? Where can people go to track their ballots?
Go to pickandvotes.com, and we will have a sample ballot online at pickandvotes.com in the next day or two.
Cool.
And is there a state site also?
Actually, if you go to
Colorado votes?
pickandvotes.com, the link there takes you into the state Go Vote
So you're good.
Colorado. So I drive everybody to pickandvotes.com because it has all your election needs within the community.
Be prepared. It's sort of a daunting looking ballot.
We have 23 styles. There are 21 measures on the ballot and over 20 candidate races. It's a huge ballot. So get your ballot in the mail, get it back to us so you can have early returns on election night. Okay.
Great. Thank you. for
Thank
the
you,
info.
everybody.
So, are we done now, John?
No.
No, we're not?
Look at Kathy. Look at the look on her. Yeah, I've
Hello.
got time.
Brian's on his way, but I got this.
You about to get this started? Okay.
It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in so long.
Oh, it was just yesterday. How's your compost?
My compost is just doing fine. My garden is very happy with it.
Good. So, I'm gonna try and get my presentation up. Are you guys okay starting without Brian?
Yeah.
This is a nice space.
Yeah, we're kind of getting more used to it. Oh, is this the construction activity I've noticed out there?
Part of it, yes.
And they found all those old newspapers? Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that.
You going to talk about that? It was very
We don't have this in our packet. Is that right?
Presentation, no.
No.
You got the memo, though.
Yeah. Okay. Kathy, just introduce yourself.
All right, Kathy Hall, I'm the solid waste manager, and I'm here today to talk about a stormwater mitigation plan. It's an informational session. We wanted to update you on what we're doing out there currently and what we have planned for the future. I will be bringing supplemental requests that will kind of go along with this stormwater mitigation plan. And as we were preparing the supplemental, we're like, this is a little complicated. We needed to come in and update you on kind of what we're doing engineering-wise out at the landfill. So to give you some background on it, so we're going to present an overview of the Solid Waste Center Stormwater Infiltration Mitigation Plan. We've been working with our contracted engineers, Weaver Consultants Group, as well as the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, on mitigating the water, the precipitation, the stormwater that's entering into the landfill. So it's just an intermediate to long-term project to reduce that infiltration in the landfill, which will reduce the need for leachate control and collection at the landfill. So we've been working closely with CDPHE in developing this engineered control plan to mitigate the infiltration, which creates leachate. Now, leachate is created in a landfill when precipitation enters into the landfill, percolates through the waste mass, the garbage, and then comes out at the end. It's essentially garbage juice. It's gross. It's high in organic content, in organic matter. Vinyl chloride is what we're seeing out there. It's also very heavy in salts and metals. So what we've sampled what we're getting out of it, it's very textbook leachate. This is not an issue that is unique to us. It goes on at every landfill. One of the challenges we face is our landfill began operations in 1964. That was 20 years before the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA, took effect. Now, what RCRA states is these permits or these rules that landfills that are built or expanded after the mid-1980s have to put into place. And one of those is leachate control. We can't retrofit the landfill as it sits today for leachate control. So we have to put these measures into place to try and limit the infiltration of precipitation, which creates the leachate. Another problem leachate creates also, as it trickles in through the waste mass, it increases the production of landfill gas. Now, landfill gas is primarily methane, and it's a very potent greenhouse gas. So that's another reason why we want to limit this infiltration of water into the landfill. So I'm going to be referring back to this map quite frequently, and just to update you kind of where we sit and orientate you. Over here is Highway 82. This is the access road. Sorry, it's a little squirrely. Access road up to the scale house. We're currently filling waste on this lower portion in this area. This is the top area where we were filling waste as of November 2014. We were filling waste up top. This is the compost area where we process and manage our compost operations. This is the access road that takes you up to the top of the landfill. So our current mitigation actions, and this is what, Patty, you were referring to, you saw some construction. About when I first started 3 years ago, I noticed in August this lower stormwater pond never went down. It always had water in it, and we'd pump out of it and use it for dust control. It never lowered the level, even though we'd be in a several-week dry period. So we looked a little closer at it, and we noticed there was a suspected leachate seep going into the side of that pond. We've been here before talking and kind of letting you know what our plans are. So we worked with CDPHE again and our engineering firm, and we installed a cutoff trench right above that stormwater pond. And we just did this in the last couple of weeks. So we installed a trench and sunk a sump into that trench area, and that will cut off that leachate, the suspected leachate, that is going into that lower pond. I have some pictures here to show you. So that was the work we did. It was really interesting. As a side note, we did dig up old trash. That's the oldest trash on the landfill site. That is an area where it is final covered. But we dug up newspapers from 1974 that you could still read, glass bottles. So it's a really interesting kind of an archaeological thing that, trash doesn't break down in the landfill. So we did save some of those newspapers. It was pretty interesting. But getting back to this, we did install this sump. We noticed the liquid levels was about 7 feet down. So we got this sump, this perforated piping inlaid, and then we covered it back up. So what you'll see now is just the top of this sump sticking out and this perforated pipe. So the next step is we'll be collecting water out of that sump system using an air stripper technology. So we'll pump out of the sump and then pump the dirty water through an air stripper. Now what this is, contaminated groundwater goes into the top of it, and it's really vigorously bubbled through a series of filter trays. And that knocks out the volatile organic compounds. Our primary concern is vinyl chloride. We are seeing a few other things. Again, not uncommon for leachate, but it's not something you want in a stormwater pond. So we'll be treating that water, and then we're predicting that the water will come out clean. CDPHE is going to allow us to continue using that clean water, treated water, for dust control, use in our hydroseeder, the spray on alternative daily cover for water needs at the landfill. We didn't permanently install this air stripper down near where the sump system is because it's going to take a lot of work to get electricity run out to the air stripper and then treated. So we're going to use it a test method. So up by the fuel farm, we'll be installing within the next week or two, the fuel farm's that's sitting up here, we'll be installing that air stripper up there. We've run electric, and then we'll be hauling that water coming out of the sump into the air stripper. And then we're going to see how well it works before we go into a permanent installation.
How do you clean the air stripper?
If they're filter trays, you remove them, replace them once they get clogged up.
Where do they go with all those contaminants? Don't they have to be treated under RCRA as hazardous waste?
They could potentially be hazardous waste, and then we'll ship it off. We have our household hazardous waste facility at the landfill. It will go with our contracted hazardous waste hauler, and they'll dispose of it properly. It can't go into the landfill.
Yeah.
So Kathy, what happens with the volatile gases that come off in the process?
They bubble out essentially and get
so is it like
released.
PVC going into the air and then people are breathing it, or does it actually break it down by adding a bunch of oxygen to it?
It is. It goes through a filter on that's located on the air stripper, but we don't require an air permit. It's not enough that the state required us to have an air permit. So it won't be at levels that are harmful to the public.
Okay.
So that is what we have done in the last few weeks. We've been working on this cutoff trench plan for a good year and a half now, but we're about ready to get it up and running, and hopefully by the end of September we'll start testing that out and seeing if it works. So the second phase, and what I'm really here to talk about that we haven't presented to you before, is really the stormwater mitigation. How are we going to stop that precipitation from getting into the landfill and coming out as leachate? So our engineers and CDPHE have put together this plan. CDPHE has approved it. And so it's in two phases. And phase one, we're looking to start this fall. And what we're going to do, first part of it, is partially cover the southeast slope of the landfill with a geosynthetic liner. It's in this dark hatched area. And what this liner is here, I have a sample of it, it's an impermeable cover that will be, essentially comes in rolls. You roll it down the landfill, we'll anchor it in, and then on top of it, we're going to put this mesh coating. And why we're going to do that is the snow. If we allowed snow to build up on this underliner, and it should slide, whether it gets warm, it has the potential to rip the underliner off the anchors and essentially be ruined. So we're going to test out this mesh material to see if it will hold the snow in place. That's why we're only going to do this small portion this fall. We're proposing to do this fall to see if it works and how well it stands up to our winters. So that is part of phase 1. Let me go back.
So,
Yeah.
Kathy, aren't there other landfills that have similar problems with snow that have had to comply with the new regs? And what are they using for liners?
Essentially, a number of landfills are using the same setup until we're final covered. Now, we only have a very small portion of the landfill that has final cover on it, and that is down by that lower stormwater pond where we put in the trench. We're not ready to go to final cover yet. It's a big engineering project. It has to be approved by CDPHE. Once you install final cover onto the slopes and the top of the landfill, you can't touch it. It is no good for any other use. So right now we do composting up there. We have our aggregate, we have our soils, topsoil and potting soil program up there. We wouldn't be able to use it for that. It also kicks us into post-closure care monitoring. So it's a whole other set of reporting and maintenance and costs associated with it. So CDPHE has not asked us to final cover the slopes yet. So, and we don't see a real need to right now. We feel this kind of intermediate solution, long-term solution will work just fine. Then the next part of phase 1 is re-engineering the stormwater drainage. We need to clean up drainage off of the site. So this is the access road that takes you up to the top of the landfill. Currently there's stormwater drainage running along this side of the landfill, really bumping up right next to the waste mass. The idea will be to get that off of that side of the road and put it on the far side where this thin blue line runs. This would be the new re-engineered stormwater drainage. In addition, there will be some stormwater drainage that comes out at the base of the hill there. We'll put a swale across the landfill working face access road, so just a low-level ditch that trucks can drive through, and then rework the drainage as it goes down here to this lower stormwater pond. In addition, there's a stormwater pond sitting right here. That's on waste. Again, get water off of the waste mass. We'll be closing this stormwater pond. And then there's one almost across the road from it that's smaller. So we will actually be expanding that, lining it with a synthetic type of material, and again, redirecting stormwater more appropriately out of that area around where the MRF building is and then down into the stormwater drainage that way. And then the last step in phase 1 will be this compost pond. In the spring, this is the compost, the runoff catchment pond for the compost area. In the springtime, it gets full of water. We have trouble managing it. It almost overflows. We have to constantly keep an eye on it. While looking at the stormwater drainage, we don't have good drainage away from it. So it is collecting a lot of water. There's a hillside that bumps right up here where the arrow is, right up next to the stormwater pond. We're getting a lot of runoff from that hillside going down into this compost pond. So we're going to rework the stormwater drainage behind this compost pond to catch that runoff from that hillside and keep it out of the compost runoff pond, and then direct it again down through the reworked drainage areas. So this is what we're hoping to accomplish this fall. We will need to put in a supplemental request. And then we'll move into phase 2 in the spring. So we'll have the winter taken care of. We'll see if this liner worked. It withheld the snow loading. We'll complete lining that side of the slope. So that is essentially phase 2. And we'd expect that, and that's this striped area in here. We'd expect to complete that by late spring, early summer. And that will be included in the 2017 Solid Waste Center budget.
I have a question. Yeah. So the thin blue line,
yes,
it's the stormwater system that goes down that side, but it also goes up and over, and is that outside of the landfill boundary?
Yeah. So we have a lot of stormwater that's not shown on here, ditches. So anything anything, because there's a slope on this side of the hill.
Right.
And this is the expansion area we're going to get into. So we're going to fix that a bit and just keep as the
That's still
slopes
on
and
our
running
property,
it off.
it's just outside of the boundary. Okay, that's
yeah.
what, all right, thank you.
Does the, talking about the expansion area, will this divert some of the water that would go down into the expansion area also?
And once we get into the expansion, we'll rework all the stormwater drainage on this side.
Maybe that blue line would extend.
Yeah, it'll
over there
go
or
probably
something?
above where the expansion is and drain it off, but we don't have that laid out in design plans yet. And the real reason, one of the big reasons, is we're doing this mitigation now. We are going to get into full-on designing and getting approval for that lateral expansion, which is, as a reminder, over here. So we're expecting the state has kind of been on us, you got to get this leachate under control. If we get this into place, get control of the leachate, get our stormwater managed a bit better, the state is going to put less conditions on the approval of that lateral expansion. So it's just taking away one kind of extra headache that we kind of foreseeing the state's going to bring up again. Now, when we do, and I don't want to get too much into this because it's not really designed yet, when we do get into the design of that lateral expansion that will give us approximately 10 years of additional life on the landfill, that area will be lined. The state has already indicated you're going to have to line that area. It's a new section, it's part of the regs, and it's just every landfill has to do that. We will have to put in leachate controls. So there will be a leachate collection system as part of that expansion. And so we'll also be looking into how we're going to manage that leachate collection as well.
Did we do a methane gas collection at the same time?
We could. We haven't kicked into the air regs yet that requires us to collect methane. Probably in kind of the back of the napkin figures. We don't have enough to collect it.
Yeah, so I was wondering.
This expansion, the lateral expansion, will kick us into what they call New Source Pollution Standards, NSPS, Title V. It's based on the design capacity of the landfill. That lateral expansion is going to push us into, we're going to be at a design capacity that we're going to have to do this preliminary testing, and it's called Tier 1 and Tier 2.
Right.
Where you do gas modeling, mathematical models, and then the Tier 2 is actually installing kind of test wells, and then they actually pump to see what they can get out. I expect we'll be able to avoid a gas system for several years to come, which is a good thing. Landfill gas systems are incredibly difficult to manage, and even the best, most well-designed gas systems only collecting about 80% of the gas. So really, we want to avoid producing gas, and again, keeping leachate out of the landfill will cut down on that gas production.
Right.
Yeah. So we're expecting about 18 months. So we're going to really begin in early 2017 the expansion design and approval process with CDPHE. It's going to take about 18 months, a little less, a little longer, depends how CDPHE reacts to our design plans. And then again, these measures that we're going to put into place this fall and next spring is going to expedite that CDPHE approval process. They've already indicated they want us to satisfy this infiltration of precipitation into the landfill. So we're hoping this will help us get ahead of the game. So phase 1, which I'll be coming back with a supplemental, is estimated at $166,800. I expect if you give the okay, I'll bring back a supplemental in the next couple weeks. And then phase 2, which is included in the 2017 Solid Waste Center proposed budget, is about $224,000. So any questions? I do understand why we need to control the leachate and the precipitation and filtration.
Any questions?
I think setting us up for the expansion is perfect. I mean, since we're doing something, let's do it with forethought, so we're not going, oh, we should have thought of that then. I think that makes it all sound a lot more common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
The questions?
It's a lot of
We're going to approve the
stuff going on.
supplemental, at least for phase 1?
Yeah, I think we need to move it forward.
Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah? Good. Okay, thank you.
Love the new
You
space.
didn't need Brian at all.
I didn't need Brian. Brian, it's so nice to see you again.
Thank you for being here, Brian.
I do have a question for you later, Brian, so don't go anywhere.
Mr. Chair, now I believe you are done.
Are we done? No more? No, we are done, really?
Nobody else waiting out in the wings.
It's 3:45. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Are there any further discussion? Does anybody have anything they want to say? Okay. the
Good
meeting's
job,
adjourned.
Michael.
I do have one, just like an announcement, really quickly. In Snowmass Village this week is the Colorado Association of Transit Agencies is having their annual meeting at the Westin Hotel. And I'm going to go up and welcome them, do an official welcoming, because Marky Butler's out of town today and couldn't do it. So, and Rachel's out of town, so they invited me which I think is appropriate since I'm a village shuttle bus driver and assorted things. But anyhow, just if you see some people around town who seem to be transit-oriented kind of people, maybe going around with a raft of people, you'll understand that there's a lot of people from the state here this week.
Well, I have one other.
Thank you, Steve.
I have one other quick closing, because this is really of greatest importance. Tomorrow is my grandson's first birthday, so remember to wish James a happy birthday tomorrow. We're having a party for him at the Roaring Fork Brewery.
A 1-year-old?
Well, yeah. Just happens to be right across the street from where they live, so if he gets tired, we can send him upstairs for a nap. Good job, Michael.
Okay, we'll see you guys sometime.
Let's see, I want to ask
Thank you, Zach.
one question. Did you want to talk about
Yeah,
this?
you can grab him
I'll
first.
grab him first. Oops.